Armies are like snakes. They both live on their stomachs. It is this age-old saying that will decide between victory and defeat in the Guadalcanal campaign. To supply tens of thousands of soldiers trapped in the unforgiving jungles of the Solomon Islands, the Japanese Navy has had to resort to a series of daring supply runs, the Tokyo Express. I'm Indy Neidell. This is a World War II special episode about the Tokyo Express. On November 15th, 1942, 4 Japanese transport ships run themselves aground at the beaches of Tasafaranga on Guadalcanal Island. In the distance, the escorting destroyers of Raizo Tanaka's task force head away at full speed, backing out of the hazardous waters of Iron Bottom Sound. Their mission to supply the Japanese forces on the island has failed. Despite sacrificing their valuable transports, they have only managed to bring 2,500 reinforcements onto the island. Even worse, much of the desperately needed supplies, ammunition, heavy guns, and above all food, is destroyed by American aircraft before it could be unloaded the next morning. To escape those attacks from the skies, the Japanese soldiers flee into the perceived safety of the jungle. Yet here, they are greeted by an even more dreadful sight. Gaunt, starving men begging for food and medicine. Those Japanese soldiers who have been stranded on Guadalcanal for months are dirty and malnourished with hair and beards growing long. Their bodies are infested with fleas, flies, mosquitoes, and lice that feed on their wounds and their open sores. The men's uniforms, or what's left of the men's uniforms, hang in rags off their emaciated bodies. Many are too weak to carry their rifles. Others don't even have the strength left to stand up. And those groups first encountered stationed close to the shores, those are the lucky ones. They can fish or gather coconuts. Those further inland in the jungle or on the rugged mountains are even denied that luxury. The few trails leading through the thick undergrowth are littered with bodies of Japanese dead and dying, not killed by enemy fire, but wasted away by starvation and disease. Inside the jungle, malaria, beriberi, and dengue fever reign supreme. Those soldiers too weak to march or even to move are persuaded to take their own lives or are simply left behind to die. The stronger men survive by eating snakes and worms. Men fight each other over captured lizards, and discipline is broken down everywhere as no one can think of anything else but food. The Japanese have given Guadalcanal a new name: Hunger Island. This lack of even basic supplies like food and medicine is easily explainable. A total breakdown of Japanese logistics. Since the Battle of Savo Island in August, the Imperial Japanese Navy has struggled to ferry enough goods and fresh troops to the shores of Tasafaranga. The U.S. Marines call the transport runs the Tokyo Express, also the Tojo Express, or Cactus Express, Cactus being the code name for the Guadalcanal area. Japan's strategic goal here is to recapture Guadalcanal, and more specifically, the American airfield on the island, Henderson Field. Having a proper base and air base here would control the eastern approaches to Australia and really compromise the American shipping and supply route. By mid-November, the Japanese have increased troop strength on the island to between 25 and 30,000 troops, at least on paper, since some forces are barely operational by that point. And while the Imperial Navy can drop off thousands of soldiers with runs once in a while, it has vastly underestimated the difficulties in supplying and feeding them. Henderson Field is a huge problem. As long as it is operational and American aircraft have local superiority, each Japanese supply attempt is almost immediately spotted and attacked. Scout planes of the Cactus Air Force fly daily reconnaissance missions, relaying back to Henderson that the Tokyo Express is coming down Broadway. Then the bombers move in to intercept before the Japanese can unload their supplies on the beaches west of their perimeter. Tanaka's major supply runs in mid-November show how costly this affair has become. The Tokyo Express loses 11 cargo ships in just 3 days, in exchange for deploying 2,500 troops, 360 field gun shells, and maybe 1,500 bales of rice to the islands. This is not sustainable and threatens to do irreparable damage to the Japanese war effort. Those cargo ships are needed everywhere, especially for importing raw materials from the occupied territories to the Japanese home islands. But what to do? Japanese cargo ships cannot safely reach and unload supplies to Guadalcanal while Henderson Field is in operation, period. But the men stationed on the island cannot hope to capture the well-defended airfield without the supplies from the transports. Japan is caught in a catch-22 on Guadalcanal. So Tanaka tries changing tactics. Instead of risking more transports, the Tokyo Express will rely on its fast destroyers, using the drum tactic. This is simple in theory. Empty fuel drums are sanitized and filled with ammunition and food supplies. Those supply drums are then attached to the outboard railings of the destroyers, which approach Guadalcanal in a defensible column. The destroyers use their high speed to dash through the slot towards Tasafaranga and release the drums into the sea. Linked together with ropes, the drums will float towards the beaches where they will be recovered by small boats or by swimmers. The destroyer column will dart back as quickly as they arrived. If they're fast enough, they can even lob a few shells towards Henderson Field for good measure. The first run of the Tokyo Express 2.0 begins on November 30th. Since they'll most likely be spotted by the Americans beforehand, Tanaka wants to negate the aerial advantage by moving during the night. 6 of his destroyers are loaded with 200 to 250 drums each, while 2 additional destroyers keep guard. Because of the weight of the drums, the destroyers can only set sail with 8 torpedoes each, and maybe half their main battery ammunition. Once they approach Iron Bottom Sound, the column accelerates to a battle speed of 30 knots. The first run is indeed spotted and intercepted by Rear Admiral Wright's Task Force 67. Although the Japanese destroyer columns turned that engagement into a brilliant tactical victory, Tanaka has to withdraw before the Tokyo Express can undertake its supply run. On December 3rd, they try again. This time, a force of 10 destroyers successfully unloads 1,500 supply drums into the sea off Cape Esperance. But although the run is made during good weather, and without enemy interference, only maybe a fifth of the drums make it ashore. The rest are either lost at sea or destroyed the next morning by American fighters. Tanaka's third attempt on December 7th has to be once again abandoned because of heavy American air attacks. The fourth attempt on December 12th is again successful as a column of 9 destroyers drops off 1,200 drums. Yet once more, of those 1,200 drums, maybe 220 are recovered. And adding insult to injury, Tanaka's flagship is severely damaged by American PT boats and he himself is injured. While recovering from his wounds, Tanaka meets with Admiral Mikawa. They confide in each other that Guadalcanal is a hopeless cause. Despite tactical successes at sea, they are facing a strategic disaster. The reformed Tokyo Express isn't working. Japan is already handicapped when it comes to oil and fuel and needs to wage the war as fuel efficiently as possible. And Guadalcanal is just wrecking that. Henderson Field does not just dominate Guadalcanal, but the sea and islands nearby as well. The Japanese harbor at Shortland, for example, is already suffering almost daily attacks by American fighters and bombers, which means the Japanese destroyers usually have to arrive all the way from Rabaul, 1,000 kilometers away. Destroyers are fast and can defend themselves, but they obviously lack storage. They have no capacity for anything big like artillery or light tanks, which might actually help dislodge the entrenched Americans. Also, each time the Tokyo Express heads down to Guadalcanal, it consumes hundreds of tons of fuel. Especially the destroyers, when accelerating to battle speed, are burning through immense amounts of fuel each time. The Japanese 17th Army calculates they need at least one successful supply run each night just to keep the 25,000 men from starving, right? And successful means a couple hundred drums full of rice, rifle ammunition, maybe some reinforcements, who in turn have to be fed as well. So estimates run as high as demanding 1/3 of the Imperial Navy's total fuel allotment each month just for supplying Guadalcanal alone. This is not possible. Guadalcanal is not just a war of attrition. It has become a black hole for Japan's precious resources. Henderson Field alone is tying the Imperial Navy down, forcing them to either endanger their transports or to spend absurd amounts of fuel without really getting anything in return, because Henderson Field cannot be taken by this half-hearted piece-by-piece approach. It is quite ironic that this realization comes around the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. At home, while Japanese propaganda publishes special editions full of bravado about that event, any real news about Guadalcanal is uncompromisingly suppressed. Both the Navy and the Army are eager as well not to lose face and boast they will soon bring in 2 more divisions from China and recapture Henderson Field once and for all. How they plan to supply 80,000 men when 25,000 are starving is beyond me. On Guadalcanal, deaths by starvation, disease, and exhaustion are now 3 times that of those from combat. The Army is wasting away at terrible speed. By December 16th, the situation has reached its breaking point. Even the 2 rival military branches agree the recapture of Guadalcanal must be postponed. The Emperor is informed, and although displeased, sees no other option himself. There can only be Tenshin, the advance in another direction. They will keep the Tokyo Express running until they have prepared a new line of defenses through the Central Solomons, New Georgia, and Santa Isabel. On January 14th, 1943, Operation KE begins, the eventual evacuation of Guadalcanal. A rearguard is landed, and the Navy keeps the Americans distracted until the troops have evacuated in early February. The operation itself is once more a masterful display of Japanese skill at sea, yet it cannot overshadow the damage Guadalcanal has done to its soldiers, or better said, the failure that is the Tokyo Express. A soldier named Ishida Yahachi will later remember what he has seen. What a sad and pitiable sight they presented. Hardly human beings. They were just skin and bones dressed in military uniform, thin as bamboo sticks. They were so light, it was like carrying infants. Only their eyes were bright. They must have been living on their strong will alone. When I put a spoon with some lukewarm rice gruel to their mouths, large teardrops rolled down their faces, and they said thank you in tiny, mosquito-like voices. I, too, felt something hot unexpectedly welling up in my eyes. My blood boiled with anger at those who had given the orders to these men. Japan's active war began already in 1937 with the war against China. If you want to go back, all the way back then, to refresh your memory on how all of this kicked off in the first place, you can check out our Between Two Wars episode about that right here. That was season 1 on our Time Ghost History channel. And join the Time Ghost Army, which finances this channel and that one and all of our cool stuff at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.